The sound of rain against the restaurant window matched the rhythm of Sarah's racing heart as she checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her dress, the only nice one she owned, purchased 3 years ago for a job interview that changed everything. Tonight, she was about to meet a stranger, and the weight of her decision pressed against her chest like a stone. What kind of mother goes on a blind date when she should be home helping with homework? What kind of woman pretends, even for one evening, that her life isn't held together by coffee, determination, and the fierce love she has for two little souls sleeping peacefully at her neighbor's house? Marcus Wellington III had built an empire worth $12 billion, but as he sat in his Tesla outside Romano's Italian bistro, he felt as nervous as a teenager picking up his prom date. His assistant had arranged this blind date after months of pestering him about his non-existent personal life. "You need to meet someone normal, Marcus," she'd said. "Someone who doesn't know your net worth before they know your middle name." He'd finally agreed, partly to get her off his back, but mostly because the loneliness in his penthouse had become suffocating. Sarah arrived first, choosing a corner table where she could see the entrance. She told Mrs. Rodriguez next door that she had a work thing, unable to admit that she was taking her first step back into the world of dating after 3 years of single motherhood. Her ex-husband had left when Emma was just 2 and Jake was 4, claiming he never signed up for this life. Since then, Sarah had poured every ounce of her energy into her children and her job as a graphic designer at a small marketing firm. Marcus walked in exactly on time, scanning the restaurant with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to reading rooms and people. He spotted Sarah immediately, not because she fit any particular image he had in mind, but because of the way she sat. There was something both elegant and weary about her posture, like a dancer resting between performances. Her auburn hair caught the warm light of the restaurant, and when she looked up and smiled, Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "Sarah?" he asked, approaching her table with genuine warmth. "That's me," she replied, standing to shake his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, and his smile reached his eyes in a way that immediately put her at ease. Marcus had dressed down for the occasion, jeans and a simple button-down shirt, but Sarah could sense an underlying sophistication that spoke of a different world than hers. They ordered wine and began the delicate dance of first-date conversation. Marcus found himself genuinely curious about Sarah's work, asking detailed questions about her design projects and listening intently as she described a recent campaign for a local non-profit. Sarah was struck by how present he was, how he seemed to hang on her every word as if she were sharing the secrets of the universe rather than talking about logo design and brand colors. "What about you?" Sarah asked as their appetizers arrived. "My friend Lisa was pretty mysterious about what you do." Marcus hesitated for a fraction of a second. "I work in business development," he said, which was technically true, though it hardly captured the scope of Wellington Industries. "Nothing too exciting, really. I spend a lot of time in meetings." As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed with surprising ease. Marcus found himself laughing more than he had in months, charmed by Sarah's quick wit and the way she told stories with animated gestures and voices for different characters. Sarah discovered that beneath Marcus's polished exterior was someone who genuinely listened, who asked thoughtful follow-up questions, and who seemed to find her interesting in a way that made her feel valued. But as the main course arrived, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. Her face immediately changed, worry creasing her features as she read the message. "I'm so sorry," she said, looking up with apologetic eyes. "My neighbor just texted my son JK. He's 6. Say he's running a fever and asking for me. I hate to cut this short, but you have a son?" Marcus asked, and Sarah's heart sank at the shift in his tone. Here it comes, she thought. The polite excuse, the sudden remembrance of an early morning meeting, the inevitable fade out. 2 kids, actually, Sarah said, her chin lifting slightly in defiance of the rejection she was certain was coming. Jake is 6, and Emma is 4. I probably should have mentioned it earlier, but she trailed off, gathering her purse and preparing to leave. Hey, Marcus said softly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. Where are you going? Sarah looked at him in confusion. Home. To take care of my sick child? Of course you should go home, Marcus said, already signaling for the check. But I'm driving you. It's pouring outside, and you'll never get an Uber quickly in this weather. You don't have to do that, Sarah protested, but Marcus was already standing, pulling out his wallet. Sarah, he said, his voice gentle but firm, your kid is sick and needs his mom. Let me help. The drive to Sarah's apartment was quiet except for the rain drumming on the roof of Marcus's Tesla. Sarah gave him directions to a part of the city he rarely visited, a not dangerous, but clearly working class, where dreams were measured in small victories and every dollar was stretched to its limit. When they pulled up to a modest 3-story building, Marcus could see the warm glow of lights in windows, could almost sense the lives being lived behind those walls. Thank you, Sarah said, turning to face him. For dinner, for the ride, for not running when I mentioned my kids. Why would I run? Marcus asked, and the genuine confusion in his voice made Sarah's heart ache a little. Most men do, she said simply. Single mom with 2 kids isn't exactly a prize catch. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Their loss, he said finally, and something in his tone made Sarah believe he meant it. As she was about to get out of the car, Sarah turned back. Would you like to come up? Just to warm up before you drive home? I know it's not much, but I make pretty decent coffee. Marcus should have said number. He had an early morning meeting with investors from Tokyo, and this wasn't exactly the simple evening he'd planned. But something about the vulnerability in Sarah's invitation, the way she was extending trust despite expecting rejection, made him nod. Sarah's apartment was small but immaculately clean, decorated with children's artwork and family photos that spoke of a life rich in love if not material wealth. Mrs. Rodriguez, a kind-faced woman in her 60s, was waiting with a detailed report on Jake's condition and Emma's bedtime routine. His fever broke about 20 minutes ago, she told Sarah, accepting Marcus's polite introduction with curious but warm eyes. But he's been asking for you. After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Sarah led Marcus to the small living room while she went to check on Jake. Marcus looked around at the space that was so different from his own sterile penthouse. There were books everywhere, children's stories mixed with design magazines and what looked like romance novels. The couch was warm but comfortable, and a basket of laundry sat folded and ready to be put away. This was a home where life happened, where love lived in the details. Sarah returned a few minutes later, her face soft with relief. Fever's gone, and he's sleeping peacefully, she reported. Emma didn't even stir. They're both exhausted from their day at the park. As she moved around the small kitchen making coffee, Marcus found himself studying her with new eyes. This woman worked full-time, raised 2 children alone, and somehow still had energy left to go on a blind date with a stranger. She was incredible, and she didn't even seem to know it. Can I ask you something? Marcus said as Sarah handed him a steaming mug. Sure, she replied, settling onto the couch beside him. How do you do it? Work, kids, everything. I can barely manage my own life, and I have a whole team of people helping me. Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering his question. You just do, she said finally. When you love someone more than your own life, You find a way to be what they need you to be. Jake and Emma didn't ask to be born, and they certainly didn't ask for their father to abandon them. They deserve a mother who shows up, who fights for them, who makes their world as beautiful and safe as possible. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. He thought about his own childhood, nannies and boarding schools, parents who loved him but showed it through trust funds and prestigious university acceptances rather than bedtime stories and fever watches. They talked until nearly midnight, sharing stories and dreams and fears with the kind of openness that usually takes months to develop. Marcus told Sarah about the loneliness of success, about how hard it was to know if people wanted him or his money. Sarah shared the exhaustion and joy of single parenthood, the way her children had taught her what real love looked like. When Marcus finally left, they stood at the door for a long moment, neither quite ready to end the evening. "I'd like to see you again," Marcus said, his usual confidence replaced by something more vulnerable. "I'd like that too," Sarah replied. "But you should know that my kids come first. Always. I don't have the luxury of casual dating or keeping parts of my life separate." "I wouldn't want you to," Marcus said, and meant it completely. Over the next several weeks, Marcus found himself being drawn into Sarah's world in ways he'd never expected. He met Jake and Emma gradually, first through carefully planned activities and eventually through the spontaneous chaos of everyday life. Jake, serious and thoughtful like his mother, warmed up slowly but completely. Emma, a whirlwind of energy and questions, adopted Marcus immediately, delighting in his patient answers to her endless curiosity about everything from why the sky was blue to whether dragons could be vegetarians. Marcus discovered that wealth meant nothing compared to the richness of family dinner conversations, bedtime story negotiations, and the simple pleasure of watching Sarah's face light up when her children laughed. He used his resources not to impress, but to quietly make their lives easier, ensuring Jake got into a better school district, making sure Emma had the art supplies she needed for her creative projects, fixing Sarah's car when it broke down without telling her he'd simply bought her a newer, safer one. 6 months later, as Marcus watched Sarah help Emma with a particularly challenging puzzle while Jake read aloud from his favorite book, he realized that he'd found something more valuable than all his billions combined. He'd found home. Not a place, but a feeling, and the knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged, with the people who needed him, not for what he could provide, but for who he was when he was with them. The billionaire who had gone on a blind date not knowing she was a single mom with 2 kids had discovered that sometimes the most precious things in life come disguised as complications. Love, he learned, wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections fit perfectly with your own, someone whose dreams you wanted to help build, and whose children became as precious to you as if you'd helped create them yourself. And Sarah, who had learned to expect disappointment and prepare for abandonment, discovered that some people stay. Some people see your beautiful, chaotic, complicated life and don't run from it. They ask how they can help make it even more beautiful.